Welcome to another episode of the DetailCast, and I have a really cool guy here who has been the face of a really successful detailing company, and if you guys need a hint, well, that would be Captain Ken Mercer. So, Captain Ken, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
And let's just dive right in because I know a lot of our listeners are going to want to get real specific today. So what I like to ask everyone is really just how did you get into detailing and how is that taking you to where you are today?
I got into detailing at a young age as it was like my first job, but it was more on the automotive side. With that, I think you have to have passion to be successful when it comes to being at least in the detailing industry, right? And I think you have to have you got to be able to be more anal, should I say, than your customer to be successful, right? So you got to be a little bit more picky than what your customer's expectations are, and that'll help you exceed within the industry. From there, obviously, as you said before, I'm a captain, so I'm a boat owner and such like that, which having the love for that really has helped me transition into the marine side of detailing, and now with Marine Detail Supply now being an opportunity for detailers out there and boat owners themselves to be able to come to one particular store and be able to grab the best and most professional grade products under one building it's grown into what it is now and in just the short term from 2020. So.
Yeah, I think just like you said, I'm a boat enthusiast. I really just like to stick to boat detailing, and it's so cool that there's a company out there that kind of tailors to that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these product companies, they make a lot of products for different industries, for automotive, for marine.
Sure.
But this one's strictly marine, and I think that's really cool because it allows you guys to excel in a certain area, and that's why you guys have been so successful.
Yeah, we have transitioned to bringing in some great products on the automotive side, like P&S and 3D and Kosh Chemi and items like that, just because a lot of marine detailers also do automotive. So we want to cater to them as well. But at the end of the day, we really focus on the marine side. I truly believe that we're the leaders of what's going on within that industry itself, but we also want to support those automotive guys and gals at the same time.
So how many brands would you say Marine Detail Supply supports and sells here at the facility?
Oh, it's tough to keep up, but I would say right now we're probably close to 35 with bringing new ones on monthly. We definitely want to make sure that whatever we do bring in is something that we can support and get behind with. So with that, if you see us carrying something, you can have the most confidence that it's truly going to outperform, and it's top tier.
And you guys have been doing this, I mean, Marine Detail Supply has been established for
since 2020. So just a short term, and now with like 7 locations nationwide now, just in that short term, with multiple conversations of more individuals that want to open their own throughout the United States, because that is an opportunity that we have in talks with another 2 or 3. So we have plans to have the ability to open in about 2 or 3 locations per year.
Yeah, and I know a lot of our listeners are from across the U.S., so could you kind of point out some of those locations that people can access?
Yeah, so we actually have one in Ohio, so in Port Clinton, Ohio. Sometimes when I say Ohio, people are like, why Ohio? Well,
that's
Lake Erie. They've got a lot of lakes and such right there. So yeah, no, it's not saltwater, which I think is where we're predominantly located. We have another one in South Carolina, Palm Beach, Riviera Beach. We have Stewart coming on. We have Fort Lauderdale that's doing fantastic, which is the super yacht capital of the world. One in the Tampa Bay area, and of course the headquarters here in Fort Myers. Expansion's good.
And so what would you say, we kind of talked a little bit about how you started, but what's your kind of goal over the next 5 years with this company? Obviously, maybe opening some more locations.
Yeah.
Just keeping the word out. Are you looking to get kind of over on the West Coast? I know.
Yeah, we would love to get over there because we have majority of our locations currently are more on the East Coast of the United States, but I'd love to get even more in the West Coast, California style, Seattle, something along the lines of that. And then even in the areas throughout the United States that have a predominantly large lake system where we can be a greater fit, because what we do have, like I said it before, is like some of the other locations that a boat owner or a boat detailer will go to only has some items, which can make it difficult. Then you have to order online, which obviously we have online. That's an ability too. So if you place an order before 2 o'clock, we ship it out same day. Kind of that Amazon feel, right? So
it is.
We understand that people need their products fast as possible to be able to either A, maintain their boat, or B, it's, as a professional like yourself, it's important to get the tools that you need to do the job right away. But to answer the question, yeah, like expansion, growth, that way we can service the customer, and eventually if we have one in every neck of the woods somewhere, it's going to be even faster for somebody to get their products, whether they just walk into the building or they have to order online on any of those sites, and they get it next day because they're so close.
Yeah, don't forget, you can also go online to marinedetailsupply.com.
Yep.
I know personally I can say that the shipping's excellent. I live local, but I'll get it in a day. But even when I lived in Ohio, I mean, 2-day shipping.
Yeah, from Florida to Ohio, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
and free shipping over $100.
Yeah, it's really good, and honestly, it's like got that Amazon feel to it. I also love what you guys are doing with the website, with the points that you can build up. I just think you guys offer
rewards.
such excellent customer service, and I'm sure that's been a big part of your growth.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. There's not a lot of these companies that start off, I would say, take more of a selfish approach. You guys kind of give back a little more, and I think people appreciate that, and it like makes you want to buy from Marine Detail Supply.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, people buy from people, so customer service, I know it sounds cliche, is our number one priority, but it truthfully is. Like, and the other thing that really separates ourselves from anyone else throughout the industry is if you're a user and you're having a concern or an issue or a challenge, you can call us here at the headquarters, and we'll literally walk you through that challenge and hopefully give you an end result that you're looking for, where you can call these other companies that have supplies that can, but a lot of times they're not going to have the answer.
Yeah, I think it's cool because you guys are also in the field. All the guys here on the team, you guys know how to detail boats. You're familiar with the products that you carry. And you can answer real-time questions, and that's really cool. You know, most companies can't do that.
Yeah, and not just being in the field is just because we have so much interaction with professionals amongst yourself across the United States. Like we take a lot of feedback from them too, which helps us develop new processes and such like that, where you're not just talking with 2 or 3 people. When you're collaborating with tens of thousands of people, you have different ways of looking at things, and a lot of times we can help solve an issue that you can't simply just go on a forum and find too. You know what I mean? Just because we kind of understand what it takes to potentially get to a result, but also understand sometimes when the chemicals are involved, if you got to use a chemical, how those work, so we can help.
Most people's questions will be tailored to their specific boat, what they're struggling with, and that's really cool that you can answer those.
My number one question is, my boat's oxidized, how do I fix it? So the beauty of that is we get that question so often. We've, like yourself, have made some videos on YouTube that really help simplify that process, because seeing is believing, I think you'd agree with. So we kind of cater the process that we believe in that way, that makes it a lot easier for people to get that result.
Yeah, and be sure to check out, we both have YouTube channels. So you got the Marine Detail Supply YouTube channel, and then you've got topdockpro. So we offer a lot of more hands-on advice and real life experience with the boats that we're working on.
And for sure, a lot of times they'll see us literally work through a live issue. It's not scripted. Sometimes it's right there, and we'll work through an issue and go, okay, well, this didn't work, but this did. I can actually see it in real time, how we deal with it. Because I think you would agree, as a professional, sometimes a process that you have that, okay, I normally do this, and you do it, you don't get the result you're looking for. So you gotta maybe make a shift on whether it's machine, pad, compound, paper, whatever, to get that end result that you're looking for.
Right, and that's certainly like a whole topic we could jump into, just the experience and different approaches you can take to things. But what I really want to talk about now, and I know you guys are kind of hoping to get some information on, is we're just going to run through the boat detailing process, talk a little bit about wet sanding, buffing, polishing, things like that. So I just want to start from the bottom, and obviously if you have a super oxidized boat, you're going to have to start with the wet sanding process or dry sanding. And that's really our first topic of concern, and I want to get your opinion on it, is a super oxidized boat, are you going to want to go with wet sanding or dry sanding?
Well, I mean, That depends on how the gel coat is going to react. So, and what I mean by that is not every gel coat's the same, right? So maybe wet sanding will be enough to pull the oxidation. So the true answer to that question is you got to do a test spot, right? Obviously you want to go the path of the least resistance because you don't want to remove more than you necessarily need to, because gel coat generally is 22 to 24 mils thick when it's new. However, I think some information people don't understand is you'll lose 1 mil of gel coat per year if left unprotected. So if you got an older boat that's been oxidized, those pores are wide open, to get back to that fresh gel coat could result in you going pretty deep to get that oxidation out, right? And with that, you want to get oxidation out, because if you don't, it's just going to come back. So there's an old wives' tale that people love to do, the old buff and wax, right? Like for me, I think that's just putting a Band-Aid over a bullet wound, because essentially if you're not removing the oxidation, it's going to come back. Yeah, you'll see nice shiny gloss, right? But now you're buffing on your boat every single year, right? To restore that surface, versus maybe sanding, going a little deeper to remove the oxidation, seal it, and then 2-3 years down the road, you've actually removed less gel coat, because those 2 to 3 years you kept hitting it, and never pulled it out. So test spot's a key. Wet sanding, obviously, we don't like to call it wet sanding, believe it or not. We like to call it damp sanding. I think wet sanding, especially in the boat world, that term gets used or taken the wrong way, because if you apply too much water, which we know people will use a water hose, you'll actually get, your paper will hydroplane over the surface, so it actually won't cut as deep. So out there, I would tell those of you that are listening or watching, like, use a spray bottle, mist the water, mist it on the pad, start your sanding process. Don't use any Dawn dish soap or any lubricant. You don't need that. You want the paper to cut, and you really want to look for like a slurry. Kind of looks like a milkshake coming behind, and if you're able to remove it with the wet, you'll see the white, right? And then eventually you'll start seeing the slushy turn to a color. And when you see the color, you remove the oxidation. But a lot of times, especially on a severely oxidized boat, wet sanding just isn't enough. And for us, I think we are of the opinion that anything beyond 1,000 grit, like going lower, dry sanding is your better option, because it's going to be more consistent. It's going to be a deeper cut, and on the other note too, it's more cost effective because the paper's more economical as well, because that's more of a working stage. So 800, 600, I mean, I've known some people that had to go down to 220, 320. It's a rarity, but it does happen. But generally, I would say a lighter colored gel coated boats, you're not going to have to go as deep because it doesn't absorb as much heat. But when you get those dark blues, blacks, reds, like yellow, believe it or not, yellows are terrible. You got to get pretty aggressive. So sometimes 400, 600, but you want to step it up from there. You don't just stop there.
Yeah, I've got to say you got a fine line with the wet sanding in terms of how much, like you said, spraying it on with the hose, how much water, plus also trying to keep that pad clean, because you don't want it to be building up with too much oxidation. Because then the pad's going to become ineffective. It's not going to cut.
You get pigtails too.
But you're right. I do notice with me doing both wet sanding and dry sanding, or like you said, damp sanding, the dry is going to cut much faster. So you're going to save some time, and with the wet sanding, you're going to have to really do quite a few passes just to really get that initial cut. I think the first round is really important. That's where you're going to kind of bite into the gel, and then typically the following rounds will be a little easier. But I have to say, I've noticed what my best approach is currently is starting off with dry sanding and then finishing with the wet sanding, because that dry sanding leaves that nice bite on the gel.
You'll notice it's more consistent on the surface too. Like if you go and do a couple of sanding passes and you see it's like sanded smooth, glossy, sanded smooth, glossy, that's inconsistency of the pad, the paper going across and cutting. And you'll notice with dry, it's, since you don't have the hydroplaning effect, it's going to cut more consistent. And big key too is using something like this, which is an interface pad. It's a must. I think it's a tool that is not used enough in the sanding aspect, and this here will save a lot of headaches.
Yeah, I know I always preach this. You really think there's that many people that don't use these?
I know for a fact there's a lot of people that don't use those, and I've been even blessed to be in boat manufacturers, and they do a lot of sanding, and they're missing the boat on this. They're creating more work for themselves, because where this really comes into play, and I think people don't understand, is pigtails, a little curlicues when you're sanding. When you make one of those, you literally double the grit. So for instance, if you're sanding with 1,000 grit and you made a pigtail from improper technique, clogged pad, vice versa, on 1,000 grit, you just made a 500 grit sanding scratch. So if you're on 800, it's 400. If you're on 400, it's 200. So I think having one of these is critical, for sure.
Yeah, it's very important to get that smooth, nice, consistent pass and pressure while you're sanding, so you're not creating the pigtails, because at a certain point too, it's almost inevitable that's going to happen.
Oh yeah.
But paying attention to them, I like to just kind of, if I see them, I like to re-hit them again before I move on to the next section.
Yep.
And just do every section piece by piece and make sure I get the best quality finish I can get before I know that I'm going to have to buff this out.
Yeah, the better you do with sanding, the less work you're going to have in the compounding stage.
Yeah, the way I always say is like each step builds upon the next. So if you destroy or you don't do the wet sanding, dry sanding process correctly, then you're going to struggle with the buffing, the polishing, your sealant. So every step's got to be completed to the highest level.
Agreed.
And that's how you become, that's really what us professional detailers are trying to do.
Yep.
And that's what makes us good at what we do, is we're so focused and detailed on each and every step. Now, one thing I do want to talk about, I know we talked about oxidation, but this is kind of my understanding, and I want to see if this is actually the right approach. So when I tell people, like, when their boat's oxidizing, from my understanding, the gel coat, it's breaking down from the outside in. So that's why you notice the longer you let the oxidation sit, it's going to get deeper and deeper in.
Correct.
That's why you have to
if
sand
left unprotected,
heavier.
You'll lose a mil per year. So, and a lot of times after a boat is oxidized, right, it's unprotected. You're not keeping up with sealants or protection that way to prevent it, right? So, yeah, no, it's outside in for sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I've always explained to my clients, and it seemed like the best approach. I know some people, I was under the conception that like dirt and grime just building on top of the gel coat, but it's actually your gel coat is breaking down the actual gel coat itself. Yep. It's working inward and gets worse and worse over time.
Yep.
That also leads to, you might be wondering why you need to detail your boat, but that can lead to stress cracks, because now you have your boat taking on water rather than repelling it. So there's a lot of issues that can happen and become about if you keep your boat oxidized and you don't detail it. And like you said, you're just losing a lot of gel coat.
Yeah, it's just going to get worse where, for instance, somebody could remove the oxidation in 3 to 4 steps, and you prolonged it. Now it's 5, 6, 7 steps to get it back. It just gets more costly to bring it back if you neglect it.
So the next thing I want to talk about is a little bit about machines.
Yeah.
So I want you to give us like a budget option machine that's pretty good quality, and then maybe an advanced technique for like a professional detailer. Maybe talk about 2 different types of machines that people can use for sanding.
So good and budget never really go hand in hand for a professional, but I would say if you're starting off, it makes sense to try to save some money. I would just encourage individuals out there to just kind of do some research on their own on that aspect, but you need to make sure that 2 things are important on boat detailing, and I get this question a lot. You need to have a rotary, and you need a dual action style machine, whether it's just a regular free spinning, whether it's a force rotation, or a long throw polisher. You have to have both. There's a lot that will go, well, I just have a rotary machine. Okay, well, I mean, you can remove the oxidation, but the action in the machine itself is going to be difficult for you to not have what we call holograms, and that's simply from the action of the machine itself, because it spins in a single motion, right? So when the light refracts off the surface, you see holograms or swirl marks, whatever you may say it. You can minimize those by changing your polish and pad combination to make it not as obvious, but it's always going to be present. And then some will ask, well, I only have a dual action machine. Well, you don't want to remove oxidation with a dual action machine because it's just going to clog the pad. The beauty of the action of the rotary, because it does spin in one motion, it helps self-clean the pad at the same time where you're doing your deep cut. However, The dual action machine won't, and that's why it kind of builds up, clogs the pad. So
what kind of machine then? So for dry sanding, wet sanding, like what machine would you recommend?
Well, recommend is not more on the economical side. I think I have one here. At least in the professional world, the most popular one is going to be the Merca Diros. This has a 5mm throw, so it oscillates and it also rotates at the same time. The beauty of this one is just how it's balanced. It's easy for you to keep it in your hand and stable. So making sure that you're smooth and consistent will lead to proper sanding. I think and this is how the interface pad works as well. So it kind of simply goes on your machine here, and it helps the machine move with the contour of a boat. You simply don't want to just go straight to the hard backing plate, and the reason for that is when you're sanding, if I don't have a strict, like perfect pressure, and I just lean, I'm going to over exaggerate a little bit. If I lean this way a little bit, it's going to put more pressure here, which is going to create a pigtail. Where when you have the interface pad, and if I lean just a little bit this way, it still has an even it has an even contact patch this way, right? So it helps go along with the contours of the boat. You're never going to have a perfectly flat surface when you're sanding all the way across the boat.
So the Merca has, this is the 6-inch. Is this the only one they make, or they make a 5-inch?
No, they make a 5-inch as well. That's really going to be on personal preference. 6-inch, obviously, you're going to sand more surface area a lot faster.
Save time.
Save time, but the downfall is the paper's going to be a little bit more than a 5-inch paper, so pick your poison. Either way, if you went along with this machine, I know it's not the most economical, but it's at its price for a reason. We've proved that because we do marine trainings too, and we'll use more of a budget machine. It'll get the job done. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to take that away from anything, but you will notice a difference in time and end result when you use more of a quality machine. So if you're going to ask me for what's the best you could buy, it's this one.
Yeah. This is pretty light.
Oh, it's extremely light. Has the ability to have dust extraction too.
This thing's very light. I mean,
and it just fits in your hand. And like if we spun it, it's really smooth too, which is a really important part. But when it comes to budget, I mean, you can just get a budget sander out there. What I mean, I would highly suggest going with something that has a 5 or 6 inch backing plate. Don't get like the square sander, and don't sand by hand either. I still get phone calls where people try to sand a whole hull of a boat by hand, and by hand is very inconsistent. You won't have consistent pressure, and man, it'll beat you up.
Yeah, it's a very old school strategy, but I know a lot of detailing companies, believe it or not, they still do that kind of.
God help them. There's an easier way of doing it.
Much easier.
Even if you went with something a lot cheaper. I mean, I would rather have a budget machine by far than try to sand a boat by hand.
So what I've done, I used to use them like the Max Shine, the Griots.
Yeah.
Kind of faded away from those. I do use the Rupas now, but I would prefer to keep that strictly for polishing.
Sure.
Obviously that's another pricey machine, but worth it in every aspect. So I still have to upgrade to this, and I know Ken's been trying to get me to, and I'm going to. Here soon. So it's just crazy because I'm used to holding the DAs, and this is like nothing.
Yeah, and you're kind of like,
this is nothing. I mean,
no.
Because a lot of the times, especially here in South Florida, we might be working off a lift or something, or we might be on the water, and it's sometimes not practical to really hold it with 2 hands. So you got awesome versatility with this. And
big time.
It's super cool. So I know, so you can actually get these here at the facility.
Like anything that we recommend, man, we're going to carry it. Because again, we're not going to support something here at the location that's simply not going to deliver the results that the customer is going to look for. So we do a really good job of vetting things. Like we get companies that approach us all the time. Hey, you should carry our product. And I make sure that I test something before we bring it into the store. With the facility that we have here, we have a full-blown detail bay, as you're aware of. And so we have the ability to test anything that's related to the marine detailing side, or even the automotive detailing side as well. So, because like I said before, that we are bringing some automotive products and brands in at the same time too. But yeah, so Merca, definitely El Primo, the one I would run. But like I said, a budget machine is going to be better than sanding by hand. So you can there's some budget tool centers that are out there, stores, and get something more economical. But in the long run, if it's something, especially if you're a professional, and invest in your business.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I know you guys aren't here in the location, but this facility's amazing. I mean, it's almost world class. I know you guys are working up to it, and it's 10, like I said, 10,000 square feet. You guys got the detailing bay.
Yep.
You got an opportunity to put on classes.
Yep.
It's just really cool.
We do that a lot.
Doing it. And I've seen you guys grow from the start, because I know just a year ago you guys were in that other location.
Yeah, it was like a
smaller.
quarter of the size.
Right. This thing's huge. You guys got awesome space to really bring in products, ship them out efficiently. You got a detailing bay that you offer, put on classes, or you can even rent out the detailing bay.
Yep. Here in Fort Myers you can, yeah.
Here in Fort Myers. So.
Especially during the summer months, right?
Yeah,
It's getting a little hot, right?
Right.
I think my car registered like 107 degrees outside the other day, so never mind, especially in a black shirt like that.
It's
You're
brutal out here.
brave.
But yeah, I think that gives the people a good idea on the wet sanding. I want to move on. I know we could talk about these forever, but
we can get real in depth on it. But.
To really get a good general understanding of some of the different aspects while they're restoring their boat, because not only do we tailor to professional detailers, but also DIY.
Oh, big time.
A lot of people like to do it themselves.
Oh, yeah.
It's really cool if you can learn how to do it and have a cool, really good result.
Absolutely.
You know, it's rewarding. I think that's why we do it. Let's switch gears for a moment. I know we talked a really good segment about wet sanding, but let's jump into buffing and kind of talk about some of the techniques to run with your buffers. But I know you touched on this a little bit about the pads, but kind of explain the importance of a wool pad and maybe some of the brands that you'd recommend.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're removing oxidation, white twisted wool is going to be your friend. That's the meat and potatoes that's going to sit there and really be able to cut deep to remove the scratches, remove pigtails, remove oxidation. So, a white wool pad is a must. And we have a few favorites. Lake Country, Buff and Shine, Stark has their own Quick Connect system, and then even some Presta pads. Again, like anything that you will find on our website is going to be a top tier, or in the stores, any of the stores, is going to be a product that's going to deliver the results. But white wool is a must.
It is a must, and I gotta say, I love the Buff and Shine, the Lake Country.
I mean, we have our favorites. Some prefer, more of a lower pile height, like a 1.25. Some prefer, a little thicker pile height, like a 1.5 or a 2.0. Some say that, the smaller the pile height, the more cut. But then again, a little thicker the pile height, the longer the pad's going to last too. So it depends on which poison that you want to go with.
Now, also, to really extend the life of your pads, I know that can be a big concern.
Yep.
How would you recommend you clean those? How frequently? Should you have a buffing spur on you while you're detailing?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, a spur or claw, like I'm a big fan of the Rupes claw over the spur. The spur works good, but I can get the same result with the claw and not have to worry about metal and stuff getting into my
it's
pad.
like technology.
Older technology. Like. It works, don't get me wrong. There's using a wooden dowel works too.
Sometimes
but you need to do it every section. I think people stretch that too far and go 2, 3, 4, 5 sections, and the wool pad starts clogging up with the compound and gel coat, because the gel coat gets in there too, right? It clogs the pad. So yeah, every section, spur in your pad. Me personally, I'm not a huge fan of washing wool pads. Just because you lose efficiency, it can change the fibers, and at the end of the day, if you're a boat owner or a boat detailer, you should really budget that with the job of just getting a new wool pad.
Yeah, that's true, and I know you recommended that Lake Country pad washer system.
Yes.
And I wanted to send you a picture the other day, because we've been using it very heavily.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It looks like a disaster, but it works so well.
If you're going to clean a wool pad, that would probably be the only option I would tell you to use, and because it will not oversaturate the pad, right? It just puts enough water or solution into the pad to clean it, and then you spin it dry, so it never stays, soaking wet, right? To really break down those fibers. Yeah, that will definitely prolong the life of one. Keep the compound from getting in there, drying out, dusting out, such like that.
Yeah,
so.
I kind of regret not having it earlier.
I told you.
It's crazy. It's just crazy how simple and how
people
fast
just think it's a 5-gallon bucket, man. It's not a 5-gallon bucket.
It takes 2 seconds. I'm getting my guys. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna have to force you to use this every now and then, because it's new, but it's unbelievable.
Well, that's just the way technology goes, and if you utilize the technology, it's going to save you time. You're going to get better result. Like I'm sure your team will notice, like they don't have to spend as much time cutting because now the compound and pad combination will do what it should, like when it's new versus, when it starts to wear down, things don't act the same way. So taking that 15 seconds and cleaning the pad is probably saving you 15 minutes over a job or longer.
Yeah, it probably is. It's, a lot smoother finish, quicker.
Yeah.
Polish works in faster. You're able to cut deeper. And I've noticed like the pad, I've almost used like 1 or 2 pads on, on the part that I was doing on the boat. But you just notice how much longer. It's not. You're not having to buy as many pads.
Oh yeah. No. The Lake Country hit that one out of the park when they came out with that product. Like I said, if anybody out there, car or boat detailing world, if you don't have a Lake Country pad washer, you're missing out. That's all I'm saying, by far.
And then, what kind of technique do you recommend for buffing? I know some people like to use an applicator. Some like to put it directly on the wool pad. And then maybe just how your technique is, like your style of buffing. Are you doing the horizontal, vertical thing, or is that really not that important?
So there's many different ways to skin a cat, right? And everybody has their style. So I don't think there's a right or wrong way. There's a way that you're comfortable with getting a result that you're getting, right? I look at maybe the science behind it more than others. Like you can apply it with an applicator, which gives you an even, consistent spread, which is good. However, you're essentially drying out the compound at the same time too, so maybe you won't get as much working time out of it. There's applying it to the pad, which works, but some of the things that I see, especially on the heavy cut stage on a wool pad, it'll clog it because it'll start soaking into the wool, into the fibers right in that particular area. And I think you'll have to spur your pad a little bit more often, and you don't get a consistent spread. Like you'll get a consistent spread with an applicator, but not necessarily applying it directly to the wool pad. To answer your question though, my personal preference is to actually apply it to the surface, just because when you're doing like squiggly lines or whatever, like the compound or the polish is still encapsulated right there, so while it's on the surface it's not drying out as fast, right? And then I like to do lines about shoulder width apart, so I'm staying consistent with the amount of product every single time versus maybe even with an applicator or a brush you're scooping a little more than you should in that particular area. So that's just my preference.
I like that approach.
Yeah, that's just my personal preference.
A little bit of a hybrid between both styles.
It is. But I would say no particular way is wrong and no particular way is right. It's just what you're most comfortable with doing.
Right, and then the final thing I want to talk about with buffing is you have a lot of different heavy cuts. Obviously, when you're dealing with compound, you want something that can cut out either scratches or oxidation.
Yeah.
I know you guys carry Levelar. You also got Presta Super Cut, and maybe a few other heavy cut compounds.
Yeah, we have some Manzurna, Presta. We have Stark's Levelar, which for us is our #1 seller, just because I think that one has just been doing so well for the customers that purchase it. They continue to repurchase it. But yeah, I would say that for the most part, those are the brands that we carry that will deliver a result in somebody's core.
Now I gotta say, I think we both kind of agree on this. We're not really trying to buff out oxidation a whole lot. So what are you looking for in a compound to get out like scratches? I think that's a bigger concern because obviously we've already talked about trying to wet sand surface to get out the oxidation, and then most of the time you're going to follow that up with a compound. So what are you looking for? How can we save steps maybe? What's your take on that? Well,
I mean, again, test spot's going to be your key, right? You want to do it on the worst part of the boat. Don't do it on the good part and follow that process. Go to the worst part, right? And a lot of times, if you just have minor surface oxidation, a heavy cut compound will remove it. But obviously, you want something that's going to cut and remove the imperfections, whether it's the pigtail sanding scratches or the oxidation, and essentially eliminate you from having to go to another step after that before moving into polishing. A lot of times you just want that heavy cut compound to remove those imperfections, and then you're straight into the polishing stage. The old way was to, okay, you got to use this really gritty one and then go to this other really gritty one, this other really gritty, and then a polishing stage. Now with how the technology has evolved, you can simply just get away with a heavy cut, move straight into polishing.
Right, yeah. The reason I said not buff and oxidation. I don't want people to, the reason I say is I don't want people to take, like, I know what you're saying, like light oxidation, obviously, but I don't want people just to assume, like, oh, my boat's slightly oxidized, and they're going to try.
Yeah, their light oxidized and my light oxidized are two different things. So, I get that, well, oh, my boat's not that bad, and you're not that bad, it's bad in most cases.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, so that'll be a good wrap to the buffing. Let's talk about polishing. I think the top of the talk really is the Rupes, random orbital versus the Flex. So I don't think people know this, but I've recently transitioned over to the Rupes 21.
Yep.
And I noticed big difference in results, a lot of extra scratch removal. Not to mention the machine's way easier to use, especially every day we do this. We're detailing every day out here in the sun, and we got the hull to work on. We got all kinds of different areas, so it's important to have a light machine, but also something that's going to be effective. Yeah, and I gotta say the Rupes 21 would be my favorite polish.
It's definitely, I think I got one here. Definitely has been a game changer, and I'll kind of talk about the science, because again, I think you kind of heard me talk earlier when you were asking me about how I want to apply compound, right? Well, I look at the science behind it, right? So here's a couple of workhorses that are within the industry. This is the newer force rotation, which would be the one that, I would prefer if you like a force rotation. This is the XCE 10-8 by Flex. A phenomenal tool, as you know, like the Beast, which you use a lot, or used to use a lot of, is the tried and true workhorse when it comes to force rotation. However, they did some more advancements in it to, improve the tool, because I think a big complaint for the Beast is the heat from it, right? That baby gets hot, right? And I kind of like what they did with this one. So, but to the polishing states, like if you're going to polish a boat, gel coat, if you don't have one of these two, you're really overworking yourself. There's still people out there using just a regular 8mm throw random orbital, where these two have an advantage, especially this one over random orbital, and we'll get into why we think this is the better move nowadays. Okay, years ago the Porta cable started it all, if you didn't know that. So the Porta cable was actually a machine that was meant to be a sander, and somebody got a bright idea to put a foam pad on and start polishing with it, and got great results. Because now you don't have a single action machine, you have dual action, meaning oscillates and spins. It does more than one action, hence the word dual. However, the bigger downfall from it then is it didn't have a lot of power, right, in the motor. So if you kind of pressed a little too hard, it would have what we call pad stall, where the machine would actually stall altogether, right? And that's really where the advancement of force rotation really stepped the game up, because this is gear driven. No matter how hard I push on this, it's going to spin and oscillate at the same time, right? So the motor technology in here really was such a far advancement for a polisher. Like, this was a must. But where the world of a long throw, and again, the Rupes, to me, okay, again, this is my opinion, is the pinnacle right now. Okay, this is what everybody should be chasing to beat. Okay, just because the quality in the tool. All right, but the science behind it, again, I want to talk about science more than brand. Okay, is this is a 5-inch backing plate, right? As you can see here, generally a force rotation is a 5-inch backing plate tool. It also only has an 8mm throw that you can see right there, meaning the oscillator is 8mm throw. With the Rupes 21, or there's other long throw polishers out there too, and the advancement of motor technologies is really where allowed this to excel now, because they're a lot more powerful than they used to be years ago, okay? Because this isn't gear driven. Like, I can stall this if I wanted to. The beauty of this one, it's a 6-inch backing plate, right? So now automatically I'm a little bigger there, right? Yeah, you could throw a 6-inch backing plate on this, create it equal somewhat. The real difference is this has a 21mm throw. All things created equal, I'm automatically 18% more efficient just using this tool alone over this tool, right? So 18% on a big surface area like a boat could potentially be a full day's worth of work, just making a machine change, right? The other advancement for me, now that the motor technology is there and the power, with a force rotation, for it to be efficient, you have to put a lot of body effort to push. It's a very quality tool, but it does take, you have to exert a little bit more energy than running a long throw polisher. On a long throw, you allow the throw to do the heat and the correction work versus your body pushing on it, okay?
More of the pad spinning and the way that it spins that would take out the correction versus the pressure, where this is more pressure based.
Agreed. So
if you just set with the pads that you can run on this, and if you just touch the surface, it's not going to do much. Really,
no, you have to push, right? You've got to push, and you have a smaller working surface area, right? Versus the longer one that's here, it's a lot smoother. Versus maybe an older individual too, it'd be easier for them to use. I even think too, like as a professional in the detailing business, when you hire a new employee, this is an easier machine to teach them on. So a lot of benefits switching to a longer throw polisher versus a forced rotation. But let's talk about the advantages of a forced rotation over a long throw polisher, because there is, and that's edge work. So when you're getting to edges and tight areas, this is going to have a little bit more precision. Okay, versus a longer throw where this can kind of get into an edge and it will stop. It won't spin. It'll still have oscillation, but it won't spin. Now, truth be told, like when it gets to precision, a rotary is going to be the best tool for you to use anyways. But this is versatile in the edge work over a longer throw polisher.
Yeah, I noticed that. If you try to throw this in a tight spot, I feel like you could damage the machine potentially.
Yeah,
the way it spins, you could damage some surfaces too, because I know the way it spins like that. Whereas this is definitely a lot easier, safer for the machine because it automatically spins.
Yeah.
So you're not messing with the orbital on that. But yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to both.
Definitely pros and cons.
Definitely.
And one, before we carry on, I think it's important to note, like some people will say, well, when you lean on this machine a little bit and it stops rotating, it stops cutting. That's a lie. It only loses about 15% because it's still oscillating.
I was under that impression too, and that's actually what stopped me from getting that machine. Is I thought, when you apply that pressure, it kind of stops spinning. That was a bad thing.
Yep. But what you'll see with either one of these machines is it's going to deliver a swirl-free finish generally. And I say generally because technically a forced rotation is still a consistent motion. It's not a random orbit. It's a dual action, but not a random orbit because it is gear driven, so it will create the same scratch over and over. Where this, if you change pressure and such, it will change the way if it was oscillating and rotating. So
yeah, and those motors are very advanced now. Especially the 21,
I would tell you the LHR Mark III. The Mark II is not the same tool. Great tool, but it's not the same. So just know like the advancements of the motor technology built into this, and then they just recently released the cordless 2. So this is the new HLR as well. And you can kind of see how those work that way.
So this one wins scratch correction. We got this one on tight, like more edge work.
Edge work, yeah.
And then what do you say? What about gloss and shine? Is that a fine line?
It's fine line, but to me, I'm gonna still give it to a long throw.
Yeah, and people might not understand too, but the more scratches you take out, the shinier the surface will look, anyways.
Yeah. It's gonna take less effort and faster with this. But if you don't have either one of these tools in your arsenal, you're missing out again, man. It's a must. You got to have it. One of these with a rotary is you have to.
Okay. And what's your opinion on the battery? If I'm going to work on
with like cordless technology,
console, should I battery the whole boat with that, or would you recommend probably a cord? Like, I would think that this would be better for touch-ups or harder to get areas. Maybe if you're on the raft, spots that it's just hard to run a cord with. But I would think I would want the power. The majority of the boat, if I have access to it. Yeah,
so obviously where this really excels is in areas that's difficult to run a cord, maybe on your top of a T-top or underneath the top, gunnel side, stuff like that, where you don't have to worry about having a cord. And the cool thing about Rupes too with this tool is this is a really powerful tool for what it is with the 5 amp hour battery. But where I think it's really going to shine is when they eventually release the corded adapter for it. So you'll be able to run it corded and cordless, which when that adapter comes out, it's going to be the only machine to do that.
Yeah, it'll be really the best option of all machines
It will.
because you'll have the option to.
Because believe it or not, this with a battery is lighter than this, which is crazy.
Yeah, I think it's pretty light. I mean, for a high quality polisher, it's pretty light.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the final thing I want to talk about is probably ceramic coating. So, you know, obviously we've went through the sanding phase, the buffing, the polishing, all those steps that are going to lead us up into protection. And we can talk a little bit about maybe sealants real quick.
Yeah, difference between sealants and wax.
You know, so obviously the big thing with a lot of DIY people or people who maybe don't have as much experience is they're just gonna want to go with like a cleaner wax. Can you explain like, is that something you'd recommend, or are there better options out there? What is a cleaner wax to you, and does it even have a place in detailing?
It's got a place in detailing when you're trying to save time and get a better result, not the result, okay? An improvement, should I say. Let me call it an improvement, not necessarily a good or a better result, an improvement. Just because any type of cleaner wax or, you know, something with a cut and a sealant is never, and I don't care what the brand is, none of them have proved it to me as of yet. I mean, eventually maybe somebody will, but you're gonna sacrifice one to have the other. So if you're going to put a sealant in with something with an abrasive, adding the sealant, you're going to sacrifice a little abrasive. If you're adding the abrasive, you're going to sacrifice a little bit of the sealant. So when in the worlds of sealant, and we say sealant because the wax is dead, I'm sorry, those of you that are still using old style products that are out there that are just been around since the eon.
Wax.
Yeah, anything along that has that type of technology, like it generally will fail around 105 degree surface temperatures, and most people don't understand that. So that's why it only, like in Florida, some of those older styles, we get a month out of it.
You have a lot of issues. You know, you have the temperature, you have possible staining because it's so hot out.
They're not chemical resistant.
And people don't realize it's just an oil. There's no bonding taking place, so it can come off very quickly.
Yeah.
You know, you get a little abrasion going through the water. Wax is probably gone. I mean,
yeah, wax is dead, man. The days of sealants and coatings is really where true protection is going to lie for gel coat, period. So do yourself a favor and just take advantage of modern technology and shift to a sealant if you're not going to go to a coating. Coating's going to be the best overall protection, bar none. It's going to seal the pores of the gel coat. It's going to be more chemical resistant too, which I think is really the difference maker to choosing a ceramic coating over a sealant, because both have hydrophobic properties, right? But how I would explain to you the difference of a sealant versus a coating, a sealant is going to react more like suntan lotion if you put it on your skin, right? So essentially it's sitting on top of the surface, right? It's protecting your skin from the sun. However, if you wash it with the wrong product, it's just going to simply come off and your skin's no longer protected, right? Where a coating, you know, something like a silicon dioxide, graphene coating, quartz-based coatings that are available on the market, simply is more like having a very good suntan. Your skin's somewhat protected. However, if you wash it, your suntan's not going to rub off, right? However, if you fall and cut your arm and you have abrasion, right? Abrasion's a coating's worst enemy. Now it's removed. So simply that's how I could describe a difference of a sealant and a coating, you know, because coatings are really bonding to the surface versus just sitting on top of it.
Right, absolutely. And, you know, I think sealants are a great option.
Oh, absolutely.
Nowadays. You know, they're an advancement from a wax. They're still not the best technology you could put on the vessel.
No.
Typically, I mean, you know, there's a lot.
Stay away from Polyglow. Please, don't do that. You'll regret it after a year, I promise.
Yeah, we could dive into that, but I think it's probably better to stay.
Oh, yeah, we could have a whole podcast over that one, man. I can assure you.
Yeah, I mean, the sealants are awesome. I mean, typically, they're going to need maintenance. They're going to need redetail.
Coatings need maintenance, though, too. They're not maintenance free. I think that's a big misconception out there, too. Oh, I'm a ceramic coat my boat and I don't have to do anything for it. It's not true. You still need to maintain it, right? And there's still a procedure to follow to make sure your coatings last.
Right, and I do want to talk about that a little bit after we cover the ceramic. So now, when it comes to ceramic coatings, you obviously have graphene, and then you have SiO2. which is
quartz
silicone
base.
dioxide,
They
quartz
have,
base.
there's Teflon, titanium. There's a lot of different chemical makeups to make up a coating per se. I think one is a popular one is graphene, right? And people look at what is graphene, and for me, and again, graphene oxide is not going to make it more durable, even though graphene is supposed to be a stronger molecule than silicon dioxide.
Graphene's strong.
Oh, yeah.
From durable. It's strong, but it's not necessarily durable.
Right. It doesn't mean your coating's going to be more durable. What I've noticed from my research is the real advantage utilizing like maybe a graphene coating over a silicon dioxide or a quartz-based coating is, it's more prone to being more chemical resistant and reduce water spotting. A lot of times that reduced water spotting is coming from a higher contact angle where, the water beads or whatever will slip off the surface a lot easier.
It's a little slicker of a coating, you would say, in a sense.
A slicker doesn't mean more hydrophobics, believe it or not. I think that's another misconception out in the industry is, people think, oh, it's slick, it's going to be more, it's going to have more hydrophobicity, and that's simply untrue. I've tested some coatings that literally to the touch is really grippy, but probably has the best hydrophobicity I've ever seen. So, they're all different.
They definitely feel, the ceramics definitely feel a little different than a sealant. You might not have the slickness to the touch, it'll be more grippy.
A lot of the slickness in the sealant is, like we talked about before, is it's sitting on top of the surface. It's not a part of the surface. A coating bonds to the surface, becomes part of the surface.
Right, and that's another thing too, is the coating is like a barrier between your gel coat and the outside environment, whereas the sealant not so much.
Well, it's still a barrier, but it's kind of like sitting on top. It's not part of it, so you can wash it off. Like, you don't use Dawn dish soap. People don't use Orpine. It's high pH. It'll remove your sealants. Don't use bleach. There's a lot of people that are using bleach on their boats. Etches your gel coat.
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic.
Oh, we can talk about maintenance and stuff like that on another day, but.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. So, best option for sure is the ceramic coating. If the ceramic coating is not within the budget, make sure it's a sealant. Don't use a standard wax.
Any sealants you recommend out there? You guys carry here at Marine Detail Supply?
Yeah, we have Jesscar, we have Stark's Hyperhold Pro, which has been really popular and has delivered great results. There's Stark's HydroGuard. Those are the ones we use the most out of all of them. We carry some other different brands, but I would say that, at least in the sealant aspect, those three are really popular. G-Technic has a spray-on fast coat, so like if you're looking for something for some quick protection, where it's really easy to apply, that's a good option as well. So those would probably be our top ones that we would recommend if somebody walked into the store and asking for at least a sealant-based. We have some other ones out there that I'm probably not naming, but again, like if it's in our store, it's going to deliver the result.
Okay, and then with the coatings, again, like if you were to go out, if someone was interested in ceramic and you're trying to, sell them on a ceramic job, how would you effectively choose a graphene coating versus an SiO2 coating? I know you said graphene does have some advantages, higher water contact angle.
Generally. There's some quartz-based or silicon dioxide coatings that have, advancement in technology that have a higher contact angle than some graphene coatings. So they're all not created equal.
Yeah, I feel like people just have a hard time, if they're so similar in a sense, like why you choose one over the other. Does it come down to preference?
So my opinion is
price a little bit, obviously.
Price can be a deciding factor, but use something that you're comfortable with using that has technical support behind it, where if there is an issue that they'll support you through it, and is more user friendly. That's what I would choose. Do research, find what maybe the professionals are using, because at the end of the day, professionals aren't going to use something that's not going to be consistent, right? Because that's their livelihood if you're a DIYer out there. And then for the professionals that are out there, just do a little bit of research. You can call us here at the headquarters, and you can kind of tell us, what your expectation level is on a coating, and then maybe we can help you make that decision.
Okay, and then, some people are under the impression that ceramics last forever, but they obviously
They do,
don't.
especially in gel coat, they do not.
Yeah,
No.
or even, some people want to say like 5 years. It doesn't. I mean, unless you're boasting the.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's some coating companies out there, and I can't support it, that say it'll last 5 years in gel coat. It's not going to last 5 years in gel coat, especially not in a saltwater environment. It's just way too harsh. Read the fine print. I would say your expectation level for ceramic coating, at least in Florida, saltwater, is a year to 2 years generally in there, okay? If you're up north and your boat is stored, it's not out in the elements, you're going to get longer life out of it, right? Because it's not being abused and exposed to UV as much as being down in Florida 24/7 in the sun. So know your environment, and your maintenance plays a role on how long your sealant coating is going to last.
Yeah, maintenance is important. I think we go into a rabbit hole, like when detailers try to tell clients, like try to guess how long something's going to last. I think that's the wrong approach to it, but more so selling it on, the fact that the boat's going to be super easy to clean. It's going to be always shiny. You're actually saving the gel coat too. You got to understand you're not grinding on the gel coat every year.
That is the number one reason to coat your boat, okay? You only have so much gel coat. We talked about that earlier in the video, right? Is 20 to 24 mils. Like, if you seal it right when you get your boat new too, is the best time to do it, right? And just know, like, if you get your boat ceramic coated by a professional or you choose to do it by yourself, it's still going to need polish before you do it. Just because it's new doesn't mean it doesn't need correction. I've made plenty of videos, and you can, we can link them down in the description below to prove it. You can see a brand new boat that is a beautiful boat, but unfortunately they all need correction work.
Right.
I haven't found a brand yet, and I've been to many manufacturers and dealt with many different type of boat brands. Do yourself a favor, get a high power light and walk around at a boat show. That's a true storm right there. You'll be surprised.
But yeah, I think I was always under the perception that you need to polish the boat, whether you're doing a maintenance on the coating and you're going to recoat the boat, or if it's new. It creates
like
the best
painting.
Surface for.
Like, if you're going to paint something, you should scuff the surface, right, to get proper adhesion. Same thing here with coat.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think, we covered quite a bit today. Is there anything that you want to announce, or anything that you want to say maybe we didn't cover? Or if you wanted to ask me a question, is there anything left that you want to say before we kind of wrap this up?
No, I would just want to thank everyone out there that has, been a part of this growth, right? People like yourself, you've been a big part of it, and every customer that chooses to go on the website and make a purchase or call us online or walk into any one of our stores value that relationship. And this is something that we're looking to continue to grow, okay, with the brands that we work with and the customers that are out there. Like, our utmost goal is just to make sure we, service them the best as humanly possible.
Awesome. Well, guys, let's go ahead and leave it at that, and we'll see you on the next episode of the DetailCast.
That's it.
Thank you.